The room went silent the moment the door opened. Not the ordinary silence of people being polite, but the kind that descends when everyone instinctively senses something is about to break. She walked in like she owned the air itself. Designer heels clicking against marble, designer bag swinging at her side, designer confidence plastered across her face like permanent makeup. Elena Vasquez, 43, former CFO of her husband's multi-million-dollar company, now his widow, and according to the woman sitting across the courtroom, a thief who stole everything. But the woman sitting across from her wasn't crying, wasn't shaking, wasn't even looking at Elena. She was looking at a manila envelope on her lap, her fingers tracing the edges like they were reading Braille. Judge Morrison adjusted his glasses, his expression unreadable. "Counsel, please introduce your client." The plaintiff's attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mrs. Sofia Vasquez, age 40, widow of Mr. Raymond Vasquez, deceased 3 months ago." A ripple passed through the gallery. Elena's smile flickered, just for a heartbeat, before settling back into place. "And you are?" Judge Morrison asked, looking at Elena's representation. "Victoria Ashworth, Your Honor, representing Mrs. Elena Vasquez, the defendant's widow." "Widow," Sophia repeated under her breath. The word came out like something bitter she was trying not to taste. "Your Honor," Victoria began smoothly, "my client is here to clarify some misconceptions. Mr. Vasquez's will was clear. Everything was left to his wife." Sophia's grip tightened on the envelope. "Your Honor, may I present evidence before we discuss the will?" Judge Morrison nodded. "Proceed." Sophia stood, her movements deliberate, controlled. The kind of calm that comes from rehearsing this moment 1,000 times in the dark. She walked toward the bench and placed a single photograph on the wooden surface. "This is my husband and Elena, 3 weeks before he died." The photograph showed Elena sitting beside Raymond Vasquez at what appeared to be a fancy restaurant. She was leaning close to him, whispering in his ear. His expression was troubled, his hand resting on the table in a fist. "Objection," Victoria said immediately. "What is the relevance of a dinner photograph?" Sophia didn't wait for the judge to rule. "This is the last dinner Raymond and I ever had. Elena arranged it. She told him it was a business meeting. It wasn't." The courtroom leaned forward. Elena's smile tightened. "Your Honor, this is harassment. My late husband's sister has always been difficult." "Sister?" Sophia turned, her voice rising for the first time. "You mean the sister you spent 10 years trying to erase from his life?" The judge rapped his gavel. "Ladies, please, Mrs. Vasquez, explain what you are alleging." Sophia took a breath. "Your Honor, my husband did not leave everything to Elena. He left a letter, recorded days before his death, explaining everything. And Elena knows it exists because she's been searching for it since the funeral." The room held its breath. Elena laughed, a soft musical sound that rang hollow. "A letter? From the dead?" "Your Honor, surely you don't expect us to take seriously a piece of paper that conveniently appeared only after my husband could no longer defend himself?" Sophia's eyes didn't waver. "It's not a piece of paper, Elena. It's a video." The word hung in the air like a challenge. Elena's smile froze. "I want the world to see what you did," Sophia said quietly. "I want everyone to hear what Raymond said about you in his final days. And I want you to explain why, the day after he died, you had his hard drive destroyed." Gasps fluttered through the gallery like startled birds. Victoria shot to her feet. "Objection." "Speculation." "Is it speculation?" Sophia asked. "That 3 separate employees witnessed the data destruction company arriving at the estate the morning after the funeral?" The judge looked at Elena, whose face had lost its careful composure. "Mrs. Vasquez, is there a video?" Elena's lips parted, then closed, then opened again. "I don't know what my sister-in-law is talking about," she said, but her voice had lost its silky confidence. "You do," Sophia replied. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. And by the end of this case, so will everyone else." The judge tapped his pen against the bench, a soft click that sounded like a countdown. "Before we proceed, I need to know if this video exists. Mrs. Vasquez, do you have any knowledge of a recording your husband made?" Elena looked at the judge, then at Sophia, then at the envelope on Sophia's lap. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "I'd like to know that myself," said a voice from the doorway. Every head turned. A man stood at the entrance of the courtroom. 60-ish, gray-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's cars. He walked in with the measured steps of someone who had spent decades commanding rooms. "Mr. Harrison," Victoria whispered, her face draining of color. "I thought you were in Europe." The man Harrison didn't look at her. He was looking at Elena, who had gone perfectly still. "I came back early," he said. "Something told me I should be here." Sophia's envelope trembled in her hands. "Your Honor, this is Marcus Harrison, Raymond's business partner and the man who built Vasquez Harrison Industries alongside my husband." Judge Morrison studied the newcomer. "Mr. Harrison, you are not listed as a party in this case." "I know," Harrison said, settling into a seat in the front row. "But I have information that might be relevant. About Raymond, about his wife, and about the company he spent his life building." Lena's face hardened. "Marcus, I suggest you stay out of matters you don't understand." Harrison met her gaze without flinching. "I understand plenty, Elena, more than you think." The judge looked between them, the tension in the room thickening with every passing second. "Mr. Harrison, if you have evidence relevant to this case, you may present it after we hear from the current parties." Harrison nodded slowly. "I have evidence, Your Honor, but it's not for me to present." He turned to Sophia. "It's for her." The envelope in Sophia's hand seemed to grow heavier. She looked at Harrison, then at Elena, then at the judge. "Your Honor," she said quietly, "the video I'm about to play was recorded by my husband 4 days before his death. In it, he explains the truth about his marriage, his company, and the woman sitting across from me." Elena's hand moved to her throat, fingers brushing against a diamond necklace that suddenly seemed to glitter with borrowed light. "Sophia," she said, her voice softening. "We don't have to do this. Raymond is gone. Whatever you think happened, can't we just—" "He told me to play it," Sophia interrupted. "He made me promise." The courtroom held its breath. "Play it," Judge Morrison said. Sophia lifted the envelope and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the table, pressed play, and the courtroom filled with the sound of a dying man's voice. The video was grainy, filmed in what looked like a home office. Raymond Vasquez sat in a leather chair, thinner than anyone remembered, his eyes carrying the weight of someone who knew they were running out of time. "If you're watching this," he said, his voice hoarse but clear. Then Elena found it. Or Sophia did. And that means the truth finally has a chance to come out. Elena went white. "My wife," Raymond continued, "the woman the world knows as Elena Vasquez, is not who she claims to be. She never was. And everything I built, everything I thought I was protecting, is built on lies." The courtroom erupted into whispers. "Order," the judge demanded. His gavel striking wood, Raymond's voice continued, unwavering. 8 years ago, I met Elena. She was charming, beautiful, ambitious. She made me feel young again. What I didn't know was that she was already married to someone else. Someone who died under suspicious circumstances 6 months after our wedding." Sophia's breath hitched. 3 years ago, I discovered she had been siphoning funds from the company. Small amounts at first, then larger. I confronted her. She cried, apologized, promised to stop. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. The video showed Raymond rubbing his temples, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. But she didn't stop. She got smarter. She created shell companies, forged signatures, manipulated records. By the time I realized how deep it went, she had already taken millions. Elena stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. This is edited, fabricated. Sit down," the judge ordered. His voice cutting through her protest. Raymond's voice continued, steady despite his evident pain. "When I tried to expose her, she threatened me. Not directly, never directly. But she made it clear that if I ruined her, she would ruin me. She had documents," she said. "Evidence of my own improprieties. Things she had planted, things she had manufactured." The room fell silent. I was afraid, Raymond admitted. Not of going to prison. I was afraid of what she would do to my family, to Sophia, to my children. His voice broke slightly on the last word. So I kept quiet. I watched her steal from me, from our company, from everything I had built. And I told myself I was protecting the people I loved. He paused, gathering himself. But I was wrong. Silence isn't protection. Silence is complicity. And if I'm going to die anyway, the least I can do is leave behind proof of the truth. He reached off camera and pulled back a sheaf of documents. These are the records. Bank statements, emails, forged signatures, everything you need to prove what she's done. They're in my safe behind the Monet painting in my study. The code is Sophia's birthday. Sophia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. If Elena gets to them first, burn this building down to stop her. She cannot be allowed to destroy what remains of my legacy. Raymond looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, the exhaustion gave way to something sharper, something that looked almost like anger. Elena, if you're watching this, know that I'm not doing this out of revenge. I'm doing this because someone needs to stop you. And apparently, it has to be me. The video ended. The courtroom sat in stunned silence. Elena remained standing, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to name: shock, rage, fear, calculation. That video is fake, she said, but her voice wavered. He was on medication. He wasn't thinking clearly. Is it fake, Mrs. Vasquez? Judge Morrison asked. Or did your husband just describe the woman sitting in that chair? Elena's eyes darted toward the door, toward escape, toward anything that wasn't this moment, this room, this truth that was finally catching up with her. But Marcus Harrison was already on his feet, blocking the aisle. Sit down, Elena, he said quietly. The reckoning is just beginning. The courtroom hummed with a tension that felt almost electric. Every eye was fixed on Elena, whose carefully constructed composure was crumbling like a house built on sand. Judge Morrison leaned forward, his gaze piercing. Mrs. Vasquez, do you have any explanation for what we just witnessed? Elena's hand moved to her throat again, fingers finding the diamond necklace like a talisman. Your Honor, my husband was ill. He was on heavy medication. He had become paranoid, suspicious. He once accused me of poisoning his coffee. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Is that true? The judge asked. Sophia's voice cut Elena through before it could respond. He accused her because he caught her, Your Honor. He caught her red-handed. Red-handed doing what? Victoria asked, recovering her composure. The video contains accusations but no actual evidence. Harrison stepped forward. The evidence exists, Your Honor, in Raymond's safe, exactly where he said it would be. Then why hasn't it been retrieved? The judge demanded. Harrison's expression darkened. Because Mrs. Vasquez had the safe's location moved the day after Raymond's death. She claimed she was reorganizing his study. That's a lie, Elena snapped. Is it? Harrison pulled out his phone. I have the security footage from that day. Would you like to watch it? Elena's face flushed crimson. You have no right to. I have every right, Harrison said, his voice cold. Raymond was my partner, my friend, and you destroyed evidence that could have saved his company, his reputation, and his family. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Harrison, if you have security footage, I suggest you present it now. Harrison nodded and approached the bench, handing over his phone. The judge watched the footage, his expression growing more troubled with every second. The video showed Elena in Raymond's study, pacing, searching. She moved the Monet painting, accessed the safe, and removed several folders. Then, she took out a lighter and set fire to the documents inside the safe. Watching them burn until nothing remained but ash, the courtroom erupted. Order! The judge shouted, his gavel striking wood repeatedly. Order in the court! Elena sank into her chair, her earlier confidence evaporating like smoke. Your Honor, Victoria said quickly. The footage shows my client destroying documents. Yes, but we don't know what those documents were. They could have been personal items, love letters, anything. They were the evidence, Sophia said, her voice steady despite the tears still on her cheeks. Every document my husband kept, every record of her crimes, destroyed in 20 minutes. Alleged crimes, Victoria corrected. Then let's test that allegation, Judge Morrison said. Mrs. Vasquez, can you explain why, 3 days after your husband's death, you transferred $47 million from the company's offshore accounts to a private holding company in the Cayman Islands? The silence that followed was deafening. Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The company needed restructuring. The company needed its CFO, Harrison said. But the CFO was too busy looting the corpse to notice the body was still warm. Mr. Harrison, the judge warned. My apologies, Your Honor, Harrison said, though his tone suggested no such thing. But the facts speak for themselves. Within 1 week of Raymond's death, Elena had moved the safe's contents, destroyed the documents inside, transferred tens of millions to accounts she controls, and removed several board members who questioned her authority. That's not true, Elena protested, isn't it? Harrison pulled out another document. This is the shareholder register. You removed 4 longtime board members and replaced them with associates from your charitable foundation. A foundation, I might add, that has received over $60 million from the company in the past 5 years. The judge accepted the document, his eyes scanning the contents. Mrs. Vasquez, do you have an explanation for these transactions? Elena stood, her hands trembling. I was protecting the company. Raymond's death left us vulnerable. I was making executive decisions to prevent a hostile takeover. A hostile takeover by whom? Sophia asked as Elena turned on her, eyes blazing. By you. By anyone who wanted to steal what Raymond and I built. What Raymond built, Sophia corrected. What you married into. What you systematically stole piece by piece. That is enough, the judge interjected. We're getting nowhere with accusations, Mrs. Vasquez. The court has seen a video of your late husband making serious allegations against you. We have seen security footage of you destroying documents in his study. We have documentation of massive financial transfers made within days of his death. At this moment, you have not provided a credible explanation for any of it. Elena's composure cracked further. I loved my husband. I would never hurt him. Everything I did for the company, for his legacy. Your Honor, Victoria said, my client is clearly distressed. Perhaps we should request a brief recess. No, the judge said firmly. We continue. He turned to Sophia. Mrs. Vasquez, what are you seeking in this case? Sophia straightened, her voice firm. I want what Raymond wanted. I want the truth exposed. I want the assets he worked his whole life for returned to the family. And I want Elena held accountable for what she did. Asterisk, what about the criminal charges? A voice called from the gallery. Judge Morrison's eyes swept the room. This is a civil proceeding. However, if the evidence warrants it, I may refer this matter for criminal investigation. Elena's face went sheet white. Your Honor, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I want to say something. The judge nodded. Elena turned to face the courtroom, her eyes finding Sophia's. For a moment, she seemed to struggle with something, words, emotions, perhaps the final remnants of a mask she had worn for too long. I met Raymond at a charity gala, she began. Her voice different now, softer, almost human. He was charming, brilliant, kind. I was lonely, unhappy in my previous marriage. He made me feel seen. Sophia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. We married quickly. Too quickly, perhaps. And for a few years, we were happy. Or at least, I thought we were. Elena's voice wavered. But Raymond changed. The company consumed him. He worked 18-hour days. He forgot anniversaries, birthdays, everything. I was alone in a mansion full of expensive things. So you took the expensive things, Sophia said bitterly. Asterisk. Elena shook her head. No, that's not how it started. It started with small transfers. Money I justified as compensation for the loneliness, for the emptiness, for everything I sacrificed for a man who barely noticed I existed. That's not an excuse for theft, Harrison said. I know, Elena whispered. I know it's not an excuse, but by the time I realized how far I had gone, it was too late. The numbers were too big. The trail was too long. I couldn't stop without destroying everything, including Raymond, Sophia said. Elena looked at her, and for the first time, something like genuine remorse flickered in her eyes. I never wanted Raymond to die. Whatever you believe about me, please believe that. Then why destroy his evidence? Sophia demanded. Why burn the documents that could have cleared his name? Elena's composure crumbled completely. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her makeup, dissolving the carefully constructed mask she had worn for so long. Because I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid of prison, afraid of losing everything, afraid of finally being seen for what I really am. She sank back into her chair, her voice breaking. A thief. A liar. A woman who destroyed the only person who ever truly loved her. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morrison removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. A rare gesture of exhaustion in a man who had seen everything. Mrs. Vasquez, he said finally, your confession, if that's what it is noted. But we still have the matter of the missing millions and the destroyed evidence. He looked at Harrison. Mr. Harrison, you mentioned that the documents were moved, not destroyed. Where are they now? Harrison hesitated. That's complicated, Your Honor. Complicated how? Raymond was paranoid even before the end. He made copies. Multiple copies in multiple locations. The judge leaned forward. And where are these copies? Harrison's eyes flickered toward Elena. One is with my attorney. One is in a safe deposit box in Switzerland. And one, he paused. One is with someone who will ensure it reaches the right people if anything happens to me. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Are you suggesting that Mrs. Vasquez poses a threat to you? Judge Morrison asked, his voice sharp. I'm suggesting, Harrison said carefully, that the woman sitting in that chair is capable of anything she believes necessary to protect herself. Elena's head snapped up. That's a lie. I would never. You've already destroyed evidence, Sophia interrupted. You've already stolen millions? What's one more crime to someone who's already lost everything? The courtroom erupted into chaos. Voices overlapped, arguments flew, and for a moment, it seemed like the proceedings might spin entirely out of control. Order! The judge shouted, his gavel striking wood with enough force to finally still the room. We will take a brief recess. When we return, I expect calm and civility. Is that understood? A mumbled chorus of assent filled the room. As the judge left the bench, Elena sat motionless, staring at nothing. Her diamonds caught the light, but they no longer seemed to symbolize power. They seemed more like chains, beautiful, expensive. But chains nonetheless. Sophia gathered her documents, her eyes never leaving Elena. Harrison whispered something into his phone. His expression grave. And somewhere outside the courtroom, in a corridor that led to freedom or ruin, the truth waited for its final moment in the light. The courtroom doors opened, and the hum of conversation swelled before fading into anticipation. Judge Morrison returned to his seat, his expression unreadable, his presence commanding an immediate hush. Let us continue, he said simply. Elena sat rigid, her hands folded in her lap. The earlier tears had dried, leaving faint traces of mascara beneath her eyes. She looked smaller somehow, as though the weight of her confession had physically compressed her. Mrs. Vasquez, the judge began, before we proceed, I need to clarify something. Your attorney mentioned a previous marriage that ended under suspicious circumstances. Care to elaborate? Elena's breath caught. That was a long time ago. How long? The judge pressed. 12 years ago. My first husband, Thomas, died in a car accident. I see. Judge Morrison nodded slowly. And was the circumstances of his death ever investigated? Victoria shifted uncomfortably. Your Honor, that incident was ruled accidental. It's not relevant to this case. On the contrary, the judge said, if Mrs. Vasquez has a history of husbands dying under suspicious circumstances, that is highly relevant. Elena's eyes flashed. Thomas's death was not suspicious. It was a tragic accident. He was driving home from work. He lost control of his car. End of story. Was it? Harrison asked, pulling out yet another document. Because this is the accident report. It shows that Thomas's brakes were tampered with. The room erupted again. Order. The judge's gavel cracked through the chaos. Mr. Harrison, if you have evidence of tampering, you should have presented it immediately. My apologies, Your Honor. I only obtained it this morning. Harrison handed the document to the bench. Thomas Barrett, Elena's first husband, died in 2012. The initial investigation concluded accident. But a whistleblower came forward last week. A mechanic who worked on Thomas's car. He says he was approached by a woman who offered him $10,000 to disable the brakes. Elena shot to her feet. That's ridiculous. I would never. Sit down, the judge ordered, his voice cold. Mrs. Vasquez, are you telling me you had nothing to do with your first husband's death? Absolutely not. I love Thomas. Then explain why the mechanic identified you from a photograph. Elena's face contorted with fury and fear. He lied. Someone paid him to lie. This is a conspiracy against you. The judge interrupted. A conspiracy involving your first husband's mechanic, your second husband's business partner, and your sister-in-law? That seems like an extraordinary number of people with extraordinary motivation to frame you. Elena opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came. Sophia stood, her voice steady. Your Honor, may I present the evidence that confirms everything? The judge nodded. Sophia approached the bench with a folder, carefully laying out photographs, bank records, and a thick stack of printed emails. These are communications between Elena and a forensic accountant named Marcus Webb. She hired him 3 years ago to create a complex web of shell companies designed to hide her embezzlement from the company. Objection, Victoria said weakly. These communications are likely privileged. They would be, Sophia agreed, if they weren't part of a criminal conspiracy. Mr. Webb has already pleaded guilty to charges of fraud and money laundering. He's provided full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge accepted the documents, his expression growing darker with every page. Mrs. Vasquez, do you have any knowledge of this Marcus Webb? Elena's silence was damning. According to Mr. Webb's testimony, Sophia continued, Elena instructed him to create over 30 shell companies across 12 countries. These companies were used to siphon money from Vasquez Harrison Industries, launder it through various international accounts, and ultimately redirect it to personal holdings controlled by Elena. That's not true, Elena whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Really? Sophia pulled out a bank statement. Then explain this. A transfer of $12 million to Beaumont Holdings, a company registered in Delaware. The sole signatory on the account, Elena Vasquez. Elena's hand moved to her chest, fingers clutching at fabric above her heart. There must be an explanation. There is, Harrison said. The explanation is that you have been stealing from this company since the day you married Raymond. You didn't love him. You married him for access to his money, his company, his connections. And when he discovered what you were doing, you threatened him. I never threatened anyone, Elena protested. Didn't you? Harrison's voice rose. Raymond told me everything, Elena. He told me about the late-night phone calls, the veiled warnings, the accidents that nearly happened to people who crossed you. That's absurd, is it? What about Jennifer Walsh? Your former assistant? The one who discovered your embezzlement and conveniently died of a drug overdose before she could testify? The courtroom went deathly silent. Elena's face drained of all color. Jennifer's death was tragic, but it had nothing to do with me. Really? Harrison pulled out a photo. This is Jennifer's apartment after the so-called overdose. Note the signs of struggle. Note the fingerprints on the wall. Note the fact that the toxicology report showed no drugs in her system. The judge examined the photograph, his jaw tightening. Mr. Harrison, are you suggesting that Mrs. Vasquez is responsible for murder? I'm suggesting, Harrison said carefully, that the pattern is undeniable. Thomas Barrett. Jennifer Walsh, and now Raymond Vasquez, who died under circumstances that were never fully investigated. Raymond died of cancer, Victoria said, but even she sounded uncertain. Did he? Harrison turned to face the gallery. Raymond was diagnosed 6 months after Elena discovered he had found evidence of her crimes. 6 months after he confronted her. 6 months after she allegedly found the best oncologist in the country. That's insane, Elena shrieked. You're trying to frame me for something I didn't do? Then explain the timing, Harrison pressed. Explain why every person who threatened your scheme died or was silenced. Explain why the evidence Raymond spent months compiling was destroyed within 24 hours of his death. Explain why, 3 weeks ago, someone broke into my home and tried to access my safe deposit box in Switzerland. Gasps filled the room. Order. The judge demanded. Mr. Harrison, are you saying someone attempted to harm you? They tried, Your Honor. They failed. But they made it very clear what would happen if I testified. The judge looked at Elena, who sat frozen, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. Mrs. Vasquez, do you have any comment on these allegations? Elena's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape that didn't exist. I want a lawyer. I want to invoke my right to remain silent. You have that right, the judge acknowledged. But invoking it now, in the face of this evidence, speaks volumes. Sophia stepped forward, her voice quiet but firm. Your Honor, I didn't come here today seeking revenge. I came here seeking justice for my husband, for his company, and for everyone Elena Vasquez has hurt along the way. She turned to face Elena directly. You took everything from him, from me, from our children. You built your empire on lies and theft and, I believe, blood. And today, the truth finally catches up. Elena's composure shattered completely. She began to weep, great heaving sobs that shook her entire body. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, she wailed. It all got so out of control. I never wanted anyone to die. I just wanted to be loved. To be important. To matter. By destroying everyone who got in your way. Sophia asked, her voice hard. I know how it sounds, Elena sobbed. But you have to understand, I was trapped. Every lie required another lie. Every cover-up required another cover-up. I couldn't stop because stopping meant losing everything. And now you've lost everything anyway, Harrison observed. Elena looked up at him. Her face streaked with tears, her mascara smeared like war paint. Marcus, please. I know we never liked each other, but you've known Raymond for 30 years. You know he wouldn't want this. He would want us to find a way forward. He did find a way forward, Harrison said quietly. He found a way to stop you. He just didn't live to see it happen. The judge rapped his gavel. This hearing is adjourned, Mrs. Vasquez. You are not free to leave the jurisdiction. I am referring this matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. Elena's head dropped into her hands as she was led from the courtroom. She passed Sophia, who stood motionless, watching her go. You can hate me, Elena whispered as she passed. But please, don't let them destroy everything Raymond built. The company, the employees, the legacy. None of this is their fault. Sophia's expression didn't change. Raymond's legacy is already destroyed. The only question now is whether anyone will be held accountable. Elena stopped walking, turning to face her one last time. I loved him. That's the one thing I never lied about. Sophia met her gaze, her eyes cold. Then you have a strange way of showing it. The doors closed behind Elena, and the courtroom slowly emptied. But the truth she had tried so hard to bury remained, waiting for the final chapter of a story that had only just begun to unfold. 3 weeks later, the courtroom was packed to capacity. Reporters filled every available seat, their cameras flashing, their pens racing across notebooks. The case of Elena Vasquez had become a media sensation, a tale of wealth, betrayal, an alleged murder that captivated the public imagination. But today, there was a new development that had everyone talking. Judge Morrison took his seat, his expression grave. Before we proceed, I have an announcement. The district attorney has reviewed the evidence and has decided to Pursue charges against Mrs. Elena Vasquez for the murders of Thomas Barrett, Jennifer Walsh, and Raymond Vasquez. The gallery erupted, and the judge's gavel was needed several times to restore order. Elena sat in the defendant's chair. Her previous confidence completely evaporated. She wore a simple black dress, no diamonds, no designer labels. She looked like what she now was, a woman facing the possibility of spending the rest of her life behind bars. Sophia sat in the front row, her face unreadable. Beside her, Harrison offered silent support. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "we have new evidence that we believe will confirm Mrs. Vasquez's involvement in these deaths." The judge nodded. "Proceed." The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane Reeves, stood and approached the jury box. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, what you have heard so far is merely the beginning. Over the next several hours, I will present evidence that will prove, beyond any reasonable doubt, that Elena Vasquez is a cold-blooded murderer who killed her way to wealth and status." Elena's attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client maintains her innocence. We reserve the right to cross-examine all witnesses and challenge all evidence." "Of course," the judge acknowledged. "Prosecutor, you may call your first witness." Diane Reeves nodded. The prosecution calls Marcus Harrison to the stand. Harrison took his place, his testimony calm and measured. He described discovering Raymond's video, the missing documents, and Elena's frantic attempts to destroy evidence. "But the most important discovery," Diane said, "was not made by you, was it?" "No," Harrison agreed. "It was made by Sofia Vasquez. She found Raymond's backup copies in a location Elena didn't know about." The judge leaned forward. "Where were these copies located?" "In Raymond's childhood home," Sophia said, rising from her seat. "He bought it years ago and kept it secret from everyone, including Elena, who told me about it on his deathbed." Diane approached the witness stand. "Mrs. Vasquez, can you describe what you found in that house?" Sophia's voice wavered slightly. "Documents. Hundreds of pages. Records of every transaction Elena ever made. Copies of the emails between Elena and Marcus Webb. And most importantly," she paused, composing herself, "audio recordings. Elena speaking with various people, arranging accidents and disposals." The courtroom fell silent. "Would you identify this voice?" Diane asked, pressing a button on a small device. Elena's voice filled the courtroom. "Jennifer knows too much. I need you to make sure she doesn't talk. Money is no object. I need it done before the end of the week." Elena went pale. That's not what?" Diane asked. "Not your voice? Not your words? Perhaps you'd like to explain to the jury how your exact vocal patterns ended up on this recording?" Elena's attorney objected, but the judge overruled. Sophia continued, her voice strengthening. "There were other recordings. Elena discussing how to handle Raymond once he became a problem. Elena arranging for the accident that killed Thomas Barrett. Elena planning everything down to the smallest detail." Diane turned to face the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, you have now heard the defendant's own voice admitting her crimes. But we have even more evidence." She signaled, and a new witness took the stand, a thin, nervous man who refused to make eye contact with Elena. "Would you please state your name for the record?" "David Chen. I was Elena's driver." "And what did you witness during your employment?" "A commitment." David's voice was barely audible. "I drove her to places she didn't want anyone to know about. I picked up packages. I delivered messages. I saw things." "What kind of things?" David swallowed hard. "I saw her meet with Thomas Barrett's mechanic, the one who disabled the brakes. She paid him in cash. I saw her meet with Jennifer Walsh's drug dealer, the one who supplied her with the heroin that killed her. And I saw her..." He trailed off, his eyes flicking toward Elena. "Go on," Diane urged. "I saw her in Raymond's hospital room the night before he died. She was alone with him for over an hour. When she left, she was carrying a medical bag." The courtroom exploded. "Order!" The judge shouted. "Order in the court." Diane waited for silence. "Mr. Chen, are you saying that Elena Vasquez may have hastened her husband's death?" I'm saying, David replied, that whatever she did in that room, Raymond was fine when I arrived and barely conscious when she left. He died 6 hours later. Elena shot to her feet. That's a lie. You're lying to save yourself. Sit down, the judge ordered. Elena slowly sank back into her chair, her face contorted with fury and fear. Diane approached the bench. Your Honor, the prosecution requests a brief recess before presenting additional evidence. Granted. We will resume in 1 hour. As the courtroom began to empty, Elena sat motionless, staring at nothing. Her entire world had collapsed around her, and there was no longer any mask she could wear, any lie she could tell, any escape she could imagine. Sophia passed her on the way out, stopping briefly. You should have stopped when you had the chance, she said quietly. You should have let Raymond expose you. At least then, you would have gone down with some dignity. Elena looked up at her, and for a moment, the two women simply stared at each other, one standing, one fallen, both carrying the weight of a truth that could no longer be ignored. He loved you, Elena whispered. Raymond, I mean. He loved you until the end. Sophia's expression flickered, not forgiveness, not compassion, but something harder to name. Then why did you take him from me? Elena had no answer. Sophia walked away, leaving Elena alone with the silence that had finally, irrevocably, caught up with her. The final day of the trial arrived with an air of inevitability. The courtroom was more packed than ever, every seat filled, every standing space occupied. This was the day the jury would deliver its verdict, and the world waited to learn whether Elena Vasquez would spend the rest of her life in prison or walk free. Elena sat in the defendant's chair, smaller than she had ever looked. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by a simple orange jumpsuit. Her hair, once perfectly styled, was pulled back in a practical ponytail. The diamonds had been confiscated as evidence, but her eyes were different too. The calculated cunning that once defined her gaze had been replaced by something softer: resignation, perhaps, or the first stirrings of genuine remorse. Judge Morrison took his seat, his expression grave. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict? The foreperson stood, a middle-aged woman with steady eyes. We have, Your Honor. Would you please read the verdict? The foreperson unfolded the paper, her voice clear and firm. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Thomas Barrett, we the jury find the defendant, Elena Vasquez, guilty. A collective gasp filled the room. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Jennifer Walsh, we the jury find the defendant, Elena Vasquez, guilty. Elena closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down her cheek. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Raymond Vasquez, we the jury find the defendant, Elena Vasquez, guilty. The courtroom erupted into chaos, cheers from those who had lost loved ones, shouts from Elena's supporters, the flash of cameras capturing history. Order, the judge demanded, his gavel striking wood repeatedly. There will be order in this court. Slowly, the chaos subsided, replaced by a heavy, expectant silence. Judge Morrison removed his glasses, a rare gesture of emotion crossing his face. Elena Vasquez, you have been found guilty of the murders of 3 innocent people. The evidence against you was overwhelming. Your own words, your own actions, your own pattern of violence and greed. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Before I pass sentence, do you wish to make a final statement? Elena stood slowly, her chains clinking softly. She looked out at the courtroom, at the reporters, at the jury, at the family she had tried so hard to destroy. I do, she said, her voice steady despite everything. I wanted to say sorry. A ripple of surprise passed through the gallery. Not because it will change anything. Not because it will bring back the people I hurt. But because the one thing I never gave anyone, including myself, was the truth. She turned to face Sophia directly. Sophia, I am sorry. Not for the things I took, the money, the property, the status. Those were just things. I am sorry for taking Raymond from you. For destroying the life you should have had. For making you fight a battle you never should have had to fight. Sophia sat motionless, her expression unreadable. I told myself lies for years, Elena continued. I told myself that Raymond didn't love me, that the company was mine by right, that everyone I hurt deserved what they got. But the truth I finally had to face is that I was empty inside. I didn't know how to love, how to connect, how to be real with anyone. So I took what I couldn't earn. I hurt people because I didn't know how to be kind. Her voice broke slightly, and now I have to live with that. For the rest of my life, in a small cell, I will have nothing to do but face the person I really am. And that punishment, more than any the court can give, is the only one I deserve. She turned back to face the judge. I accept whatever sentence you impose. Your Honor, I only ask one thing. What is that? That you take everything I stole and return it to the people I stole it from? Give the company back to the employees who built it? Give Raymond's legacy back to his family? Let what's left of my fortune fund scholarships for young women who might have ended up like me if someone had shown them another way. The judge studied her for a long moment. Your statement is noted. He shuffled his papers, preparing to deliver the final judgment. Elena Vasquez, for the murders of Thomas Barrett, Jennifer Walsh, and Raymond Vasquez, I sentence you to 3 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Elena nodded, accepting the verdict as though she had expected nothing less. As an additional measure, the judge continued, all assets belonging to the defendant will be seized and distributed according to the terms of Raymond Vasquez's updated will, which has now been authenticated. Sophia rose slowly, her face wet with tears. Not tears of joy, but of something more complicated, the end of a long journey. The closure of a wound that would never fully heal. As Elena was led away in chains. She paused at the door of the courtroom and looked back one last time. Sophia, she called softly. For what it's worth, Raymond talked about you at the end. He said you were the best thing that ever happened to him. Sophia's breath caught. He said he was sorry he didn't leave you sooner. He said he should have seen the truth earlier. He said, Elena's voice broke. He said he loved you. He always loved you. Then she was gone, led away into the corridor that led to her final destination. The courtroom slowly emptied, but Sophia remained seated. The weight of Elena's words settling into her heart like stones dropped into still water. Harrison approached her gently. Are you okay? Sophia thought for a long moment before answering. I don't know. I thought I would feel vindicated, happy even. But all I feel is tired. That's understandable, Harrison said. You've been fighting for so long. I have, Sophia agreed. But now it's over. She's gone. Raymond is gone. And I have to figure out what comes next. She stood, gathering her things, her movements slow and deliberate. What are you going to do with the company? Harrison asked. Sophia smiled slightly. I'm going to run it. Raymond would have wanted that. And I'm going to make sure everyone who built it gets what they deserve. And Elena's request? About scholarships? Sophia paused at the door. I'll think about it. Maybe some good can come from all of this. Maybe someone else can be saved from becoming like her. She walked out into the sunlight, leaving behind the courtroom, the memories, and the woman who had tried so hard to destroy everything she loved. Behind her, the truth finally rested where it belonged in the light for all the world to see.